Welcome back everybody. In this lecture we are going to be discussing variable assignments. Now we just saw how to work with numbers. We had integers and floating point numbers, but you actually have a variable name assigned to them. So it would be nice if we can assign these particular data types a variable name to easily reference them later on in our code. For example, I could say a variable name my underscore dog is equal to 2. Now there are a couple of rules for choosing a variable name in a Python. And these rules are that names cannot start for a number. There can also be no spaces in the variable name, so you should use an underscore instead. And you also can have any of these symbols in a name. And if you actually forgot this list of symbols, if you were to type one of these symbols out in a variable name, Python would quickly complain and you would have an error. So you don't need to worry about memorizing all these. You get the error as you are typing along a few more rules about variable names. It's generally considered best practice according to Pepet that names are lowercase. Now there are situations when you become a more advanced programmer where you're going to want to have a kind of global variable names in all caps that are used to write your code. But right now in general want to keep our names lowercase, and we also want to avoid words that have a special meaning in Python, and these are built-in keywords like list or as for strings. You may be wondering, well, how to heck am I supposed to know what are the special built-in keywords? Luckily, any development environment that's designed to work with a Python will have syntax highlighting that will alert you that using a built-in keyword by highlighting a different color, and you will see an example of that just in a little bit. Before we actually jump to the pie chart, though, I want to mention that Python uses dynamic typing, and this means you can reassign variable to different data types, and this makes Python very flexible in assigning data types, and that's actually different than many other programming languages that are statically typed. So let me show you an example of what I mean by this in Python. Something like this is totally okay. Here I have assigned my dog's variable name equal to 2, and then later on in my code I went ahead and reassigned the same variable name by dog to completely different data type list, Sammy and Frankie. Now that's totally okay in Python, but in other languages that would produce an error, and that's because these other languages are statically typed, meaning in other languages such as C++, you would have to say int for integer and then say my dog is equal to whatever integer value. You would not be able to assign a different data type. You would not be able to say my dog is equal to Sammy because it's no longer an integer, now to result in an error. So there are some pros and cons to dynamic typing in Python. The pros is that not having to write out the actual data type saves you a lot of time and makes it really easy to quickly produce Python code, and it also makes your code very readable because you are just reading that variable name. Now this kind of double-edged sword here, because the cons is that this may result in bugs for unexpected data type because you are not having these restrictions of data types, especially when you are dealing with user input. You may have unexpected data types show up, and that can cause problem later on in your operations. So you should be aware of the data types as you were coding, and you can use a special type function that's built into Python to quickly check the type of any variable, and will show you how to use that. Alright, so let's explore all this concept by jumping to the PyCharm. How to create Python file in PyCharm. So go to Python tutorial and whatever directory you made, right click on it and go to new and select Python file. Here I am going to make a new Python file called variables, and the new Python file is created, and the extension of Python file is .py. Okay, now that we have seen how to use numbers in Python as a calculator, let's see how we can assign names and create variable. Firstly, I want to introduce you to print. It basically print the message in a console. For example, I want to print Adian in console, so I type print and then parenthesis and then quote and inside quote I type Adian and then run the program. It's print Adian for me. So the use of print function, we print all the messages to the console. It is very basic and very important thing that you have to know. So let's start with assigning the variables. Firstly, we assign a integer to a variable called a, that is a is equals to 5. 5 is an integer because 5 is not inside the quote. And if you want to check the value of a, then simply you have to write print a. So let's run the program, and here we get 5. And if we want to reassign the value of a and print the value of a, so it's very easy. Go to the first line and reassign the value from 5 to 10 and just run the program and check. Here the value of a now becoming 10. I could reassign it to be say something like a is equals to a plus a, and then run the program, and here we see the value of a is becoming double because we add a value of a to another value of a. Let's reassign it to be a floating point number. So we will say now a is becoming 30.1, and run the program again and we will get 30.1. If we want to check out the type of any variable, then we have to simply print the type of variable. So you have to write print type and open and close parenthesis and the name of the variable, and run the program, and here we get class float. This is the type of the variable. If you remove this line and now check the type of the variable, then it give int, that means integer. So these are the same keywords that we saw when we discussed that table of the basic data types. Now, as you previously mentioned, you want to avoid using built-in Python keywords as variable names, and the way you could know if that's happening or not, it's, let's say I wanted to start assigning int is equals to 4. So notice what's happening here. I have syntax highlighting on int. So if you ever see that your variable name is having some special highlighting than a normal variable name, it doesn't have, then you should avoid using this. So definitely don't ever run that. If you actually run that as you were following along, or maybe you made some other reassignment mistakes, you can also do some logical operations with the variables. So let's check it. So let's assume a is equals to 5 and b is equals to 3, and then print a plus b and run this program, and we will get 8. So 5 plus 3 is equals to 8. So up next we are going to learn about strings. So that's it for today, and we will meet in the next lecture.